Ne auzi?
Hello.
Eu. Vrei la fix să încep sau nu cred că... Pentru că intră și Daniel.
Îmi spuneți dacă vreți să începem sau începem la 12 și dacă în română, în engleză și ce mai e nevoie.
Păi, până acum a fost în engleză, deci cred că tot așa.
Ok, no problem. Nu m-am auzit că ați vorbit în română și nu știu.
Da, mai scăpăm și noi în română.
Ok.
În pauză.
Rămânem numai așa pe voi sau pe cameră? Nu am toate informațiile, întreb acum, înainte să începem.
Cum vrei, cred. Dacă ai o prezentare de făcut, cred că poți să-i dai și share screen.
Prezentare n-am făcut acum, că am zis mai mult să fie o interacțiune, să povestim, să nu fie o chestie de turuit.
Ok. Doar când vrei să începi să ne anunți înainte să poată Andrei să înregistreze. Ești cu noi, Andrei?
Ok.
Ok.
Putem începe dacă vreți.
Sigur.
E ok?
Da.
O ascult cu drag.
Okay. So then switching to English, right?
Yep. So the next item in our program is board games in our daily life, with our guest Andrei Dănescu from Proti.
Hello.
You may begin.
Okay, so hello everyone. So this, let's say, the topic of these hours will be related to board games and how you can implement in your daily life, respectively, how is it helping, in what situations you can play them, and so on, and some other things regarding the board game hobby, which in my opinion is one that is really fascinating and helps in different directions. But I last year I made like a presentation a bit about what board games exist. We will mention it a bit in this discussion too today, but I wanted it to be more an interaction today, and you can ask questions, interrupt me if you have any curiosities about board games. It's much easier, and you can get much more information out if we have like a discussion. Either way, we have it now in an online mode. Most probably, if we would have had it physical, which board games are all about, it would have been more interesting. We could have played games and so on, like it was planned if the pandemic wouldn't have hit. But now let's work with what we have with this online session, and that's why I thought it's interesting to make it more interactive, maybe in a form of questions and answers. I will give you some general information, and then I will talk about different topics, and you can ask me stuff and curiosities if everybody is okay with this approach. Question to all of you present here is anybody who played already board games, and what board games did you play, so that I have an idea what the audience is knowing about board games already, so that I don't go now in the really basics if everybody had already some board games played.
Frankly, I haven't played any board games. Instead, I've only read about the lore from Dungeons and Dragons, if that counts.
Okay.
So I doubt it counts at all.
How can you not have played board games? It's like board games are everywhere now.
Does Nu te supăra, frate count?
Yes. It's a board game. It's a board and it's a game. So.
Then good.
Okay.
Yeah, I've played a number of different board games. Maybe too many to count. From I don't know, Arkham Horror to Quest for Middle Earth. What else? There's so many. There's a Warhammer 40k game which I actually own. It's not actually a 40k, it's the fantasy version where you play as one of the four gods, and try to corrupt and destroy the land. It's a very negative game. So yeah, there's a lot of them. I actually can't remember all their names right now.
Okay. Anybody else wants to say if they played board games? So we have like already here somebody that has like experience with the classic ones, like we played chess and Nu te supăra, frate, and so on, and somebody that already played some modern board games, like they're called. So you see, even in a small group, there is a split mixture in here. Anybody else wants to share if they played any board games and what board games? Okay, if not, then generally what I wanted to talk about board games as a beginning, I will not go into, okay, what's a board game? Because this is mainly in a few words. It's a game that you play on the table. Mostly it is generally, even card games and so on, you can put them in the big, the big scope of board games. So if we start from chess and Nu te supăra, frate, and so on, and go on to modern board games, which were mentioned by Christy, everything is related to board games. Now, and usually these are games which are played on the table or tabletop, and are physically put on the table so that you can sit around the table and play with other people. What happened now in the COVID period, even more, it was started in the even before the COVID period, but now it was even more focused, was trying to move different games to online platforms, either browsers or phone apps, just to keep the hobby alive and give you the possibility to play board games with your friends, but not in the same place because of the restrictions and so on. This is just a general idea about board games. But what we do and what we like in this whole hobby is the point that you can play together on the table. This is, in my opinion, the most important thing regarding board games. Because, yeah, you can play them online, what I was mentioning, to keep in touch with the friends that you usually met directly. But now when the restrictions maybe at some point are gone, I think everybody will migrate back to sit on the same table to play, because this is the idea of board games, to get people together, to socialize and so on. And then is one more concept which I approach shortly here, but there is even a documentary, the first one in Romanian, which was just which is airing on YouTube tomorrow. It had already the official let's say start in cinemas 2 weeks ago, and it is talking about the concept that board games are for kids, or the idea that you usually hear when you're talking about board games: I'm not a kid, I don't play board games. Because yes, board games are important in the development, let's say, and you can use them in the development of children. There are educational board games. There are board games starting from 6 years to like 14 years. I don't count the 18 plus, which are more, let's say, more party games where you laugh and drink something. I'm talking about the usual board games, and there you have let's say a difficulty span from small children to us children, let's say, and that's why board games have, like, in my opinion, multiple scopes, besides that they are fun and are a nice hobby. First of all, and I think the most important one, is that board games bring people together and are making them socialize in another way than just sitting on the table and talking about what they did today or yesterday. And what is interesting when playing, and what I think is interesting to bring board games to, let's say, team buildings or something like that, where you want to know the people, it's not like you're playing the game, because the idea is then if you have people that are playing board games, they are through them, let's say. Because if you're talking about things, you can let's say put a person in front of the other people that you want to appear. But if you're playing a game, you will always be you. And this is something that I always find interesting. And let's say, after talking with a person 3 hours or playing with them like half an hour, I think I can know more about a person after playing half an hour with them than after talking with 3. Because usually when you're playing, the kid or the true us will come out, and then you will see if they are, I don't know, they play more aggressive or more defensive or something like that. But this is an interesting aspect that I just wanted to mention shortly here. And maybe if you play board games, just to take a look and analyze the persons which you usually know, like, let's say, calm persons, and then you see they get stressed out or nervous at a game. And this is interesting because there has to be somewhere that nervous, which you didn't see, because they try to be the calm one to be seen by everybody else. Chris, you want to say something?
Yeah, regarding what you just said, and especially the fact that some board games are for kids and others are for adults. For instance, and regarding the aspect of one's calmness when it comes to board games. Now, there's certain board games which are usually played as well by adults as children, and they sort of force you to become a children, but in the most nasty way. The examples are, for instance, Monopoly or maybe Risk. So these board games can get you so angry at your opponent that I have witnessed people leaving the apartment or the play area, or friendships have been ruined by the fact that some of your opponent is far more luckier than you are at dice, and he totally crushes you in that game, and that makes people very frustrated. But then again, you have board games like, I don't know, Toilet Struggle or Diplomacy, which are so complicated that they can't be played by kids, and being so overly complicated, they do not give you the time to get angry, because you have to always, they're so complex, there's so many things happening that there is no time for you to get angry because you're just, calculating opportunities and next movements and so on and so forth.
Yeah, exactly. Like this is the main point. And what I wanted to say too is that there are, with the different let's say difficulty span, you have the ones for children, and then you have very complex games. Just like you mentioned, you cannot get angry because you don't have time to get angry, because you have to concentrate and calculate everything what you want to do. And this is like the point where I started with this concept of I'm not a kid, I'm not playing. This, in my opinion, if we want to grow as a community, a board game community in Romania, which is a small community at this point, if you compare it to other countries in Western Europe or so on, where there are much more games, much bigger communities, there are events regarding board games. Here in Romania, we have one big event in Târgu Mureș once a year, and now local ones, different people want to try to do different things, inclusive us, which are always trying, ramping stuff up, and then we are getting closed again, let's say, or are not able to do anything physically, like you see here the event you are running, that or the event here we are present in. It would have been for sure much more fun and interesting to have it physically, but yeah, this is not possible now. And this is a hobby which needs this physical meeting, let's say, which now are an issue. And going back to the other things that are interesting by playing board games, one, just like I said, is the coming together part. Second is the educational part. And here we're talking, yes, kids games which have different educational concepts which are helping them develop different aspects. But in the same time, in my opinion, every board game, even the complex ones which are played by adults or by kids that are a bit older, because of the complexity of the game, are each and every game is teaching you something. Even I, when play a game, I'm learning something, either on the strategic side or on the team side. Or if you talked about Twilight Struggle, this is an historical game. If you're playing that, it's about the Cold War. If you're playing that game, that with the whole actions and everything that are happening during the game, you will learn the events that were happening then. So I think these are two main things. Is one, the bringing together and get to know people better because they are the true selves, let's say, during playing. Second is this educational part, which children and adults can get different things out of board games. And of course, the last one is the fun part, which of course we don't have to set aside also, because this is the idea, to have fun, get to know people, and learning stuff by having fun playing board games. But I think the main idea is to have the presence on the table. This is where this hobby has the biggest impact. And making a parallel to these three things that I wanted to mention, which board games bring, then another discussion is, yeah, but when do I have, because we are living in a fast-paced world, and everybody is in a rush. And then you are having the questions, yeah, okay, let's say I want to play board games. When do I do that? Because I don't have everyday time to play a board game. First of all, you don't have to play every time or every day. You can play once a week, twice a week. It depends how you can organize your time. But if you put your this is a short parenthesis, because I'm doing trainings on time management, and I'm always telling people that it's, if you organize your time proper and set let's say how do you call them, the priorities right, you will get time to do everything what you want. Because then you say, okay, I don't have 3 hours to play a Twilight Struggle or Diplomacy, what you mentioned. Yeah, but there are a lot of good games which are putting your brain to work, which are half an hour or an hour. I, for example, call it with my wife when we play, there are games which we call them weekday games. That means that are games that are, let's say, strategical and difficult enough to put our brains to work, but in the same time, they are not longer than 1 hour. and these are like 1 hour. I think everybody can on a weekday or every 2 weekdays, every 3 weekdays, working weekdays, I mean, spent to play a board game. Because another benefit which I didn't mention in the 3 is the mental gymnastics which you do by playing board games, and it is somehow or not discussed that it helps for expanding your brain capacity and working against Alzheimer for later if you play board games, because board games is not let's say repeated type of mental work, because all the games are different, and then you have to have different strategical approaches which make your different part of the brain work. So this is another benefit that I didn't mention in the beginning. But this is, Chris, you want to say something?
Only if I'm not bothering, because I don't want to interrupt your
No,
presentation.
this is what
You just got me going now.
Want. Yeah, this is what I want, to make a discussion, but I keep talking until somebody wants to say something.
All right. You said mental gymnastics and different approaches to games, and it's quite extraordinary for the fact that board games and different board games have different types of interactions. So obviously because they don't have the same game mechanics, and I think that going a bit back to what you said about meeting and knowing people, I believe that the two big components of board gamings or characteristics, one is the cooperative games, where you have to defeat the game which plays against you. Either you have the other one, which is you play against each other, and that builds up different interactions each time with the people and you play with, and have the quality of having to have different strategies. And two of the best games that I played, one which is cooperative and the other one which puts players against other players, and in the end does not break up friendships. So the first one is Arkham Horror. I've mentioned that, where you play cooperatively against the board, and you have to work together, because if you play on full difficulty level, it's almost impossible to beat the game. But you can if you discuss, if you talk, if you communicate, if you plan, and you do the strategy together. And that's quite amazing, because people get a level of connection there, right, where they discuss, they debate, they propose plans, they look ahead, they see the possibilities of winning the game. The other one, and I believe it's one of the most fascinating board games I've ever played, is Battlestar Galactica, where seemingly at first everyone plays together cooperatively, but the game's proposition is that some of you are actually traitors. They're in disguise. They're I forget the name. They're the robots. They're the sort of robot clones from the movie, the series, which haven't been activated. Do you remember what they were called?
The Cylons, right?
Yes, the Cylons. Yes, and at first, basically, some of the players know they're traitors and they have to play against the human players, but they can't reveal themselves because the human players have the possibility of putting them in the brig, where they can spend the rest of the game and just be bored by what's happening because they have nothing to do. So then you have to start acting, and because you have played this game before, you know that there's someone amongst you who is not a human player, but it's a Cylon. So it becomes a game of suspicion and trying to figure out which among you is the traitor, while the traitor has to play his cards exactly right, so he will not have suspicions arising around him. And I believe these two aspects are amazing when it comes to interacting with people and playing a board game which offers you a story. because it immerses you. It immerses you very well in the atmosphere and the story of the game. That's all I wanted to say. Thanks.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Okay. In this, Chrissy, thanks for the segue, because I wanted to move then shortly to because first of all we talked about time, and if you want to find the time, you can if you prioritize your days. But this is if you prioritize your day. But this is another topic. What I wanted to say regarding the time part, there are games which have different time spans. There are games which are very strategical that I have, like small box games, which have like 15 minutes. These are games like me and my wife, I always say this, we will call them like coffee games. Like when you sit in the morning to drink a coffee, it's a 15-minute game which starts your mind to work in the morning. Because I know my grandmother always woke me up and said, okay, now we make some gymnastics so that your blood is starting to flow and your body is ready for the day. This is the same thing with those short 15-minute games where you can play in the morning to get your brain to the same state. So there are games from 10 minutes to 8 hours that you can choose from. So the excuse, I don't have time, is not necessarily an excuse. So we talked about benefits, we found 4 benefits. Then we talked about the time part, which there are games of different time frames that you can have in your collection and play. So you will always find like 10-15 minutes to play a board games if you... We discussed about the difficulty levels and about children that use it educationally and can grow into heavier games by going through this flow. Another topic that you mentioned, Christian, I wanted to, or in a way mention, and you helped me to segue to is you will always find a game for you. Because there are games that we're not talking now about difficulty and time, we discussed about that, but we're talking about team and mechanics. So if you are a fan of science fiction, randomly picked, then you will for sure find games which have that theme. Or you are a fan of fantasy. Again, there are a lot of games. But even if you search for some more niche, let's say, thematics, like, I don't know, walking dogs. I just saw a video about a Kickstarter game which is going live now. So there are actually, you play the game that you are walking dogs and try to get different dogs to walk them. You get money for that and so on. Or different niche things, brewing beer. There is 1 or 2 games, which are good games, which have this kind of theme. So theme-wise, you will for sure find a game or more, depending on the theme, that you are able to play. So that this is a theme that you like. Another topic is mechanics. There are games which are games that you play cards in, games that you are like, just like you said, Christy, with traitors and so on. It's called a social deduction game. You have party games where you like activity and so on. You have worker placement games where you place a worker and do some action. You have games where you have a lot of combat in them. So you have mechanics-wise, again, a lot of options that you can choose from. Just to give you a bigger scope, now excluding these pandemic years, even though there was not that badly affected, but it's more now affected because of the logistic crisis which is in the world. There are around between 2,000 and 3,000 games which are launched yearly. Of course, maybe 15% are not either not accessible for everyone or are not that good. I don't know. But there are a lot of board games that are yearly being launched. So for sure, you will find the board game for you if you want to get into this hobby. Nobody says that you have to have hundreds of board games so that you can play board games. No, you can have 1 board, 3 board games, and this you can, or 10 board games. Those you play, when you play them out, you can either sell them or give them to somebody and you buy another game. Or another type of board game that are now is the escape room type, where you have those like a scenario, like in an escape room, just you play it on the table. So there are a lot of type and different themes and mechanics that you have in board games. So if you search for a board game, you will find something team-wise and mechanics-wise that you like, probably even more. So these are the from my point of view, just to I always tell to everyone that if you want to try this hobby out, either go to some events, but in Romania there are not that many, so just try, buy a board game, and then see how it works. And what I'm always telling them, because I started a channel in Romanian language, where I explain most of the games, first of all, that are translated in Romanian, and now I started to present other games too. And why did I do that, or why did I start that, is because there is a big risk to lose people that maybe would have been in the hobby, but we lost them. And how do we lose them? They go to the big stores or the supermarkets where you can find in the board game section some games. They pick up a game, they look on the back where some information about the board game is. They say, okay, this looks nice. They go at home, they don't like this board game. And what do they say? They say, the hobby board gaming is not for me, which in my opinion is wrong. This game was not for me. Let's try some other game. But because of maybe not knowing all and everything behind the hobby, people are generalizing to, I didn't like Monopoly, for example, when I was small, so for sure I will not like board games. But going back to everything what I said regarding different teams, different mechanics, you will find for sure, I think there is a board game for everyone. And of course, there are different things that you can take in consideration. It depends on, of course, if you choose a board game. If it's what group do you play with? Is it a group bigger? Do you play more for having fun and drinking something beside, or do you want to have something more strategical? Again, so many mechanics, so many different teams that you can choose from. So this is another point that I always say, is there is a board game for everyone. There are no bad board games. It's just the situation, the group, and the disposition, let's say, that you have when you play this board game. And actually, that's why we started the channel, is if a person wants to buy a board game, they can look fast on the video of this board game on my YouTube channel, because I already covered a big part of translated games in Romania. And they can see, okay, this is what the game is about. It's with negotiation. I'm not a fan of negotiation, so I will not pick this game. I will look to another one. And so you buy something by knowing what you're buying, because there are a few just, let's say, expertized board game shops in Romania where you can go and they can explain what are the games about before you buying them. Because usually most of the population in Romania which have board games in their homes, either for children or for themselves, more strategical, more complex games, they buy them maybe in like just don't tell names, in supermarkets or libraries which have board games too, or this kind of locations, let's say. And there mostly people will not be able to explain you every game. If you come in specialized shops, which in the big cities there are some in Romania, they will explain you the game, and then you will make the correct decision. And I tried with the channel to give this explanation, but on in a video mode where you can check every time to see exactly what's happened. So this is regarding the selection that you have. So we talked about the benefits that board games bring you, and the huge amount of variety and possibilities that you have in buying board games. Time-wise, let's say time-wise, team-wise, mechanical-wise, and difficulty-wise. So that's why you always have to take in consideration. And if you hear people talking about, yeah, but board games are for kids, it's not true. It happens sometimes when we had events, and now we had some events in the summer where the restrictions were not so bad, where persons are coming, and this is another thing that I wanted to shortly discuss, they are bringing their children to the event, and they say, okay, I leave them here, I come back afterwards. And I say, no, this is not the approach that you have to have. You have to sit with them and play with them, because this is a moment which board games which bring families together on the same table. Because now usually everybody's doing their own stuff, and yeah, if we go together in vacation or so, then you have some more family time. But with a board game, now talking about family, you can bring the family every day half an hour together to play something together. And here board games are actually a good thing, because they are going through, let's say, through the educational part too. And this is always everything what I encourage. When people are coming to the events, I'm saying, no, don't leave the children here, but they will play on their own with themselves. No, this is not the idea of board gaming. The idea is to sit with them and play with them. Yeah, if they play afterwards with their friends the game, this is something else, it's good. But at least try, if you can, at least a bit, one time a day, half an hour, I think you can take out to play, or once a week. I don't know the program from everyone, but this is a good, let's say, a possibility to sit as a family on the table and play something. So this is regarding that. And then one other topic that I wanted to discuss is maybe you heard, if you were interested about a bit about a hobby, is that this hobby is expensive. In my opinion, is every hobby is expensive. Now, depending, of course, on the hobby, but how deep you want to go in this hobby. You can have this hobby, just like I said, and you have like 3 or 4 board games, and you play them over and over again. You are still in this hobby. Yes, if you want to have 300 or 3,000 board games, this will get expensive. But again, expensive compared to what? Because there are hobbies which are much more expensive than you having 3,000 board games, and humongously more expensive if you are having just 1 or 2 board games. And in another, let's say, aspect, let's say you go and let's say you buy a board game. Let's say we buy a weekday board game, like I call them, that they are 1 hour or so, and you pay, let's say, 150 RON, which is 150 RON, let's say. How much this is, like in euros? 30, 40 euros. Let's say 50 euros. Yeah, you pay 50 euros to get 1 board game, and you play that board game, let's say, 6 times. And let's say the board games is like half an hour a game. So that means playing it 6 times, you had an activity for 3 hours. If you go 4 people, because 4 people usually play a board game, or 3 people, or if it's party game, even more. But let's assume we are 3 people that are playing a board game. Okay, 1 second. I think I pressed something. Oh no, I'm back. Yeah, let's assume there are 3 people playing a board game, and the board game was 50 euros. If 3 people go to a movie and you buy a Coke and some nachos, I think you get to those 50 euros. Maybe even more. And there, you just go to 1 movie. You will not discuss and socialize, where you will just watch the movie, and then it's done. The board game you will still have in your home, and maybe play it more than 6 times, which is equivalent, let's say, price-wise, with getting activities for 3 hours, which is maybe the movie is 3 hours with all the activity there. But it's something else. Or you go and drink and eat something, you get to the same thing, to the same price. So if you take it like this, I don't think it's an expensive hobby. Yeah, maybe it's more, but even if you go, if you have a hobby like anything sport related, you have to buy equipment, you have to, so the question is always, compared to what is the board game expensive? Or this hobby expensive? Yeah, if you want to have 3,000 board games, it's maybe more expensive than going running, where you maybe just buy some shoes and equipment and that's it. So always please take this in consideration too, if you think, okay, it's an expensive hobby or not. And by discussing about all those topics, I feel that it is an interesting hobby. We really like it, and we try to bring as many people as possible into this hobby on our, let's say, part, or where we can influence things, because I think this is a hobby which can bring a lot in education, can bring a lot in bringing together families and having fun, bringing friends together, having fun, even being used in in schools and being used in companies for team buildings and different things. So I think this hobby is something that has a future. I see it growing since I am in this domain with those videos and events and so on. I see it in Romania growing step by step, but I think we have still a lot of more space in this hobby. So this is like some general aspects which I wanted to discuss and tell you why it's a hobby we like, and we encourage people to get into the hobby, and in the same time how it can be part of your day-to-day thing, because you can, just like I said, it's not expensive, it has a lot of benefits. Now taking into consideration how you take this expensive, how many board games you have, but it's not expensive. It can take a big amount of time or a short amount of time. You can play it with kids, you can play it adult-wise, it's educational, it brings different benefits and so on and so forth. And see, there are a lot of things which, in my opinion, talk for being part of this hobby, being something interesting, and being something that everybody can find something for themselves to play. This is now, so generally, I talked a lot. Now, if you have any questions or any topic where you wanna ask me, or you want us to discuss in the remaining minutes that we have, or are you agreeing with what I'm saying and not agreeing? So I'm open to hear whatever question or opinion you have.
I do agree with everything you said, and I do believe that it's it's quite an expensive hobby in a certain way. For instance, if there aren't so many board games translated in Romanian or made in Romania, and most of the board games you can find are imported from, well, probably the Anglo-Saxon world, US, UK, whatever. So if you want to go, if you want to buy something specific, and you have a great passion for board gaming, then it can get really expensive. So for years, I want to buy the Lord of the Ring. I think it's called. It's probably the ultimate Lord of the Rings board game, because it's huge, it has figurines, it's complex, it's an artwork basically, but it's incredibly expensive, because you can't find it in Romania. It's expensive to start with, so it's expensive even if you're, it's expensive for them, but then if you want to buy it and get it shipped from whatever, Canada, New Zealand, US, UK, then the money will double, triple, just like that. So and I think that's bad for the Romanian board game players, that there isn't a bigger market, though I see that it's developing right now. So yeah, that's my take on that. It can get really expensive really fast if you're going down that rabbit hole. The other, I would like to ask you a question. So, what would you recommend, or how would you recommend a newly come board game player, or a board game, person which has a passion towards board game, where to start buying board games, how to assess, what might be tailored for him, and yeah, how would you recommend the start of this passion to a newly come board game player?
Okay. A short something regarding the being expensive. Yeah, for sure. So if you search for something specific, maybe which is already out of print or so, it can get expensive. It depends very much what do you want with this hobby. If you don't want something specific, you want something that you can play or have some theme or mechanic that you like, then the options are more cheaper and more vast. You clearly said that you want the War of the Ring. which is really it's a good game, but this is really specific, and this can get expensive. And this is true. It depends very much what you want to do with the hobby. Regarding the question for new players, so what I'm doing, and I will correlate to that in the events that I'm doing. I have like one group, and now two more groups will join. I bring them through the, let's say, board game flow, how I see it. That means they come with zero knowledge, or not zero knowledge. Let's say nu te supăra frate, Monopoly knowledge, and I step by step bring them with different games, get them to let them know different mechanics, and then slowly go to some heavier games with them. This is what I created, let's say, a concept that I use here in Timișoara for that specific events. But if there is something that I should recommend to people for getting into this hobby, it's first of all, it's really important to understand what do you want with these board games and with what group are you playing. If you're playing with friends and you just want to have fun, then I will recommend some party games. And if you get like code names or trap words, Decrypto, Mysterium, and so on. So these are like considered party games. And the rules are really easy, and usually you have to, activity-wise, you have to either describe stuff or or Dixit, another good example for a party game, where you have to discover the picture and so on and so forth. So starting with those party games. Then if the people are interested and say, okay, do we have like something more strategic, not so much fun, then you already know you hook them and they are more interested. And then I will recommend games again which are considered like gateway games or entry games. And if I can talk with them, I can recommend them like Go, Catan. Yeah, Catan is overplayed, and but the point is Catan did the job for bringing a lot of people to the hobby. And that's why all my respects to Catan. Yeah, Catan is not a game that I will, as a first option, take from my shelf and play, but I respect it for everything what it did for the hobby. And other things is like Ticket to Ride, or go like easier card games, like, I don't know, Port Royal or Set, or bring easy games to the table that there are not a lot of rules to explain, but get them into the game as fast as possible, and then they will always ask for more. If they already find it too complex or they don't like the let's say the entry games, then you can see, okay, show them one or two more, and if not, maybe they are just meant to stay to play party games. But usually if I'm not able to talk a long time with them, then I always recommend, if they look on the internet or either Dice Tower or so on, which are huge channels in English language, look at the top 10 games for entering players or for new players, because usually these are games which are globally known as games that are good for entering this hobby. Between them, the ones that I told you, like Ticket to Ride, like Catan, like the abstract games are, in my opinion, again, interesting ones for new players, like Azul, Mandala Stones, and so on. Why are they interesting? First of all, there are abstract, no theme, but the components are usually really nice. If you maybe search for some pictures and see Mandala Stones or Azul, the pieces are really nice. It's more of a tactile experience, which maybe bring people into this hobby. And of course, there are a lot of other entry games. And what I am trying is, if I have the time to discuss with them, to see maybe if they played some games, like Monopoly and Nu te supăra frate and so on. I see what type of games they like, and then we start with those mechanics, let's say. And then go and show them all the big mechanics that are in board games, and then going slowly to heavier one. I don't know if I answered the question. Maybe if you can ask something more specific, then afterwards that I can give a more specific answer to that.
No, it's fine. It's actually quite good directions that you gave for newly comers.
Can I say one more?
Sure.
Yeah, because
sure.
you mentioned it, and I forgot to mention it in the different teams and mechanics. Another important one that I think work really, really good in bringing new people to the hobby are cooperative games. Why? And this is another good one for playing easier cooperative game like Zombie Kids, Zombie Teens with children. Because usually when you work together, when you explain a game, you can even explain it on the go because you discuss about everything what you're doing usually. There is a risk to have an alpha gamer, how they are called, that actually then is taking the control over the game. But if the group is okay, cooperative games are great for bringing new people because you can explain them during the game, and not because if you play competitive against each other, then you cannot say, okay, show me your cards, because then you have to play suboptimal because you know their cards or so on, and then it's not that nice. But cooperative games are, again, really good for bringing new people to the hobby, which I always recommend. Sorry, now Christy.
No, it's fine. And I wanted just to mention the fact that this sort of interaction which you have with a passion can go from just being a hobbyist in board games to becoming a total maniac. For instance, when it comes to certain games which have become obsessions and passions more than hobbies, like for instance, any trading card game. Like
Yeah.
World of Warcraft, which has, I think I had that virus a couple of years ago. I still have boxes of cards, stashed somewhere because it got, it really sucks you in because it becomes so huge that the possibilities become endless. They just keep adding content all over again. And the other one is, and I think that's a bit more nice and fascinating because it has the artistic value as well, not just the game value, which is a tabletop game like Warhammer, for instance, where you get figurines, you paint them. So basically, the gameplay and playing the game is like the last step in this whole artistic chain of things you're doing, from buying the figurines and building an army to specific needs to try and bring them to life artistically so they look more real, so they suck you in more when you're finally playing that game. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, this is another example, exactly what we discussed up front. It will be something that everybody can find. If you feel that you are a person that wants to play just one game, but have a huge variety, these are the just talked, which always there is new content for them, and you can play just Magic the Gathering or just Warcraft or just Warhammer, just like you said. And this is like a lifestyle game. This is how they're called. So if you want just one board game and invest all your money, of course you have to set your budget, your time, your depositing space. So you have to set some barriers for yourself. But this is the same for every hobby, I think. Yeah, even if you're running, maybe you always want to buy new shoes for running, which are the new high-tech ones. Or if you go fishing, I don't know a fanatic fisher which has just one fishing rod, right? You have to need 20 fishing rods or 30. So I think every hobby can bring you in spending more than you need. Important is to set boundaries. But again, or if you're, just like you said, if you're a fan of painting, then maybe you will tend more to go to board games which have miniatures. So part of your game experience is the painting one. So again, you see that there is for sure something for everyone in this hobby. Any other? Yep.
Just maybe because I know you do videos as well and you have content, just place links in the chat for everyone to have access to, and search good quality Romanian content on board gaming, because it's rather scarce.
Okay, should I put a link in the general, or where should I? Or
you can put a link in the program chat.
Okay, I will do it then after the meeting. Thanks. Yeah, but important for the people listening, like Proti plays, like from playing with with an epsilon, let's say. But important is to know that the content is in Romanian, because this was always my idea, to help the Romanian community grow. And people, even though they speak English, it's another feeling to listen to a video in your mother language. And that's why I focused on making all the content in Romanian. Besides Instagram, on Instagram I make the posts in like the short text that I write, I do it in English. But Facebook and YouTube is in Romanian. And yeah, this was my whole idea from the beginning. Even though people are saying that, yeah, it's nice what you do, move to English for more views, I never was about the views or so. For me, it was important that the Romanian community grows, and to have some, if somebody's asking me about the game, I can give them a link and they can look at the explanation. So this was always, I was more about the community than, I don't know, living out of YouTube or something. Okay, I think we.
I think we're nearing the end of the program
exactly.
item. Thank you so much, Proti, for being with us. And
Welcome.
if there are any other questions directed to you, I think that they can be answered in the text chat. Okay,
yes,
thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you too. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.
Bye.